guys, this is your girl AP, and welcome to my channel. And of course, I have a special guest here today with me. Her name is Ronny. You might know her on social media as The Life of Ronny on Twitter and Instagram. And today we're having a special conversation regarding an article that Ronny wrote for the Indigo Blue magazine, which is her journey to accepting professional help with mental health. So, Ronny, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Your introduction was great, and we'll stick with that. Y'all know I'm shy, even though nobody believes.
Not a problem. So, and I don't want people to think I'm being rude. I'm literally looking at her article right now. And I would just like to express that, thank you for joining me today. Because if you guys don't know, we try to have this conversation at least 2 to 3 times and record it, and we have been met by every obstacle in the book. But we're going to do this today. So when I saw the tweet go up, because I stalk Ronny on Twitter, she's hilarious, and I saw my journey to accepting professional help, I was really excited. Mental health is a really big part of my platform, as most of you guys know who follow me. So I'm always cheering on people who are ready to delve into their story, share their experience, because I am a firm believer that when we share our stories, no matter how small or how large of an impact, we're impacting someone. And that conversation of mental health definitely needs to be discussed, and more so within Black communities, because it's still a very taboo thing. So Ronny, can you just talk to me a little bit about what prompted you to want to share what was happening in your life in terms of your approach to mental
health? Like you said, it's in the Black community, mental health is still a taboo subject. And I knew that just from other past experiences that no matter what you're going through, somebody else has been through that as well. And so I just felt like it was beyond time to be a little bit more vocal than what I have been in the past, instead of sharing with just my family and friends or, close-knit people that I met through social media. I've made the impact there, but there's still tons and tons of people suffering in silence because they feel like that they are alone, or that they don't have anyone that they can relate to, or that they just don't know how to navigate the process of seeking help professionally for mental health problem or illnesses rather. So I just feel like it was time to change the narrative, break the stigma, and have a conversation that's long overdue in the Black community.
Now, I don't want to give away everything that's in my article, because I do want you guys to actually go to the indigobluemagazine.com site to actually read her article, and I will link it down below. However, there were a lot of points you hit on in your article, the kind of the steps to even getting help. And if you don't know, and if you're not a person who's familiar with how mental illness works, admission is half the battle. Acknowledge, yes, literally half the battle. The other half is getting the help. So can you talk to me a little bit about when you became cognizant of the fact that you were depressed? I know it involved a very close friend of yours, and then kind of the journey that led to you finding a therapist.
Oh God. So it was just like lots of things. The biggest thing that made me stuck there, for the lack of a better phrase, is that I did become a little bit more withdrawn than normally. I felt solace in isolation, which is not me at all. Like, I am a homebody, also like an outgoing person, especially around people that I like to be around. And so when I'm in an environment with people I like to be around, and it's like, yeah, I'd rather be home, or I'm not very conversational. Those are things that typically are not like me. Coming home and the ability to down a bottle of wine within like minutes, and I'm sleeping all the time. Just, yeah, things that I knew weren't, one, me, things that I knew that two, weren't healthy. And then some other little things that was happening that my best friend recognized and was like, yeah, you know, it's time for you to get some help. You need to see someone. And of course, I'm just kind of initially like, girl, we went to the same college with the same major, the same courses. Don't come give me this textbook stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. But like you said a second ago, admission is literally only half the battle, because once I came to terms with what she was telling me and what I was recognizing in myself, it was like, okay, yeah, there is an issue. There is a problem. And so now we're halfway there, trying to get therapy. Because at the time I finally decided to reach out and do something. I no longer have health insurance. And so that's a whole nother journey, trying to navigate any illness or any kind of health problem without insurance is ridiculously hard, right? And so at the time I was living in Pensacola, and it was like this one place that the job I previously had, we would refer clients to and stuff. And so then it became, well, clients might still be there. They're going to know me. Some of these people I've met through work, some of them I met through like being involved in the community, and I know they work at this facility. So then it was battling my own mind to be like, I don't want to be judged. I don't want people to think any less of me. Having to utilize these services and things like that. And once I got over that hurdle, in addition to the other ones I had to get over, you know, so I call up the place and I'm explaining what I'm wanting and what I'm seeking. And they're like, oh yeah, you know, you can come in, we're 24 hours, 7 days a week, come in when you want, but you need to bring like your ID, you need to bring your payment information. If you have health insurance, bring that. Bring a change of clothes and bring your phone charger. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, wait, I don't think you heard what I was asking for. And she's like, no, I heard you. Anybody who wants services here have to go through a 24-hour psychiatric evaluation, like it's mandatory. And she basically said, once you check in, you cannot leave. And I'm like, yeah, no, F that. I'm not doing that at all. And not to mention, like, just the phone call in general, she was very robotic and monotone, not welcoming at all. So putting her voice in, just imagining like if this is how she's sounding, then I can't imagine what the actual facility is going to be like. I can't imagine what the actual experience there is going to be like. So I was just like, whatever, I'm not doing this. Hung up the phone, and kind of fell back on therapy. And then, you know, you do little things, self-medicate, right? So I would journal. You do all the self-care stuff that everybody talks about on the internet. Like, oh, if you're having a bad day, just take a bubble bath with these nice eucalyptus, lavender, chamomile bath bombs, and you're going to be so rejuvenated and da-da-da-da. And it's like, I did this, and now I'm crying in the bathtub because my issues are not resolved. I'm still sad. I'm still essentially broken on the inside because I still need help, right? And so I used like edibles. I went back to drinking, not as much, but I did go back to drinking. Just following positive pages on like social media. There was like a couple of pages dedicated to people, like if you couldn't afford therapy, here's like some random general tips you could use. Trying to implement those types of things, and they worked for a while. And then it's okay, well now I see I'm falling back into the same pattern. I'm falling back into the same cycle. So it really, really took me a while. And then when I finally got serious again about going to therapy, I had like this list, right? Like more like a scroll of things I want, a scroll, like to just roll it out, a scroll, right? Of all these things I wanted in a therapist. And I think most of it was me intentionally being difficult. So self-sabotaging before I even had a chance to start the process, because I knew that since I had waited so long to seek help again, that it was going to be so much more to unpack. It was going to cause me to do so much more self introspection. It was going to cause me to be way more involved in my healing than what it would have been previously when it was just surface level stuff, you know? So this scroll was like, okay, well, first of all, the person needs to be Black because I'm Black, because I'm not about to sit here and talk about my trauma with no white person. Then it was, well, it has to be a female therapist, because if it's a man and he's too fine, I might be attracted to him, and then I'm gonna have to get referred to somewhere else. And then I'm like, ooh, should I also want like a plus size therapist? Because then if I bring up something about like always being fat since like being a child, is a skinny therapist gonna be able to relate? You know, then I was like, well, I subscribe to Jesus, but I don't think I want a Christian therapist. Then I wanted a therapist who had like night and weekends. I needed a therapist who offered like virtual thing, like literally a scroll, Alicia, of qualifications that I needed to have in a therapist. And the big guy upstairs, Sky Daddy, was like, okay, if this is what you want, this is exactly what I'm going to give you, because you need help. And I literally found all of those things, like even the most ridiculous things that was on my list, I found in one person. And then it was just like, oh, okay, this is good. This is great. I'm glad I finally got to this point. But it was a long, long, long journey to get to the point of seeing a therapist on a routine and regular basis. Just a very, very long road to get there.
All right, now that we have arrived at, we've got therapists, right? Because listen, what you're saying, I think whether we go through the exact same system of trying to find a therapist, many of us are in that position of trying to find the right person. In the beginning, when I first started pursuing mental health care, that was when I was still living in Philadelphia. And it didn't even dawn on me that I could request or ask for a Black therapist or any of those things. So my first few handful of therapists were older white women. And let me be clear in saying that I didn't have a harrowing experience because they were white. Because at the time, none of the things that I was discussing had nuances of being Black. It was very general things that I was addressing. As I got further into my therapy, you know, I eventually learned, like, all right, I know what I want in a therapist now that I've done this a few times. And it has taken me time sometimes to find the exact therapist that I wanted. And I want anybody watching this to understand this is your mental health care. So it is important for you to be able to find someone that you're going to be comfortable doing the work with, because you don't want someone that you don't feel like you can open up to, because it'll just be a waste of time. But also in the same breath, we got to give them an opportunity. And then if you don't like them, fire them. This is your,
right.
You're either paying out of pocket a copay or you're literally paying out of pocket, period. So you have the right to decide where you spend your
every.
But now that you've gotten this therapist, I want to talk a little bit without you having to divulge, you know, what your therapy sessions are about. People sometimes assume that once you go to therapy, it's just la la la, I'm just talking. They don't understand how rigorous sometimes and emotionally taxing therapy sessions can be. So can you talk about how you self-care while you're going through therapy?
So one of the very first things I told my therapist when we were like, so the therapist I have now, I had so much anxiety built up around like that first appointment, so much so that I actually canceled it, because I just was not in the space to handle it. And then once we got rescheduled, had the first thing, or the first session, the second first session, and we're like outlining the schedule and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, the very first thing I'm going to tell you is I don't want no Friday appointments because you're not going to be ruining my weekend. Because I don't know what we're going to talk about in therapy, but I know that I don't want to go into my weekend with a heavy heart because you never know what's going to come up. But I normally have something that I treat myself to, and I will wait until after therapy to do it or get it or indulge in it or whatever it is. It's my way of processing what happened in my therapy session, and then moving myself back into a mood that I want to be in. Because like you said, it is rigorous. Sometimes things do come up that could bring repressed memories or feelings back up, and those types of things. And the biggest part of that is I allow myself to feel whatever it is I feel. So many times we try to keep ourselves busy and just dismiss a feeling. And if something comes up and it makes me feel a certain type of way, I'm going to feel a certain type of way, and I'm going to process what that certain type of way is. So whether it's journaling afterwards or just something, I do some type of self-care, and most of the time it's saving a treat for myself in some ways. And that treat sometimes could be going to Target because that's my favorite place in the world. Sometimes it can be a new restaurant is on DoorDash. And so now I'm taking myself on a little post-therapy self-care date. It's just really important to know that sometimes in therapy, it literally is just like a conversation with just friends where you catch your therapist up on what's been going on in your life over, in between sessions. And sometimes it's, oh, well, you just mentioned this. Let's unpack that. Or why did you do this? Or why did this make you feel this way? X, Y, Z. It's not always laying on a couch and having this big breakthrough and suddenly you're fixed for that moment. It does not work that way. So I like that you just mentioned the self-care with therapy, because a lot goes into it than how it's portrayed, especially on TV. People think it's just you lay down, you have a conversation, your hour's up, and you feel it's rainbows and butterflies, and it's not like that at all.
And I want people who are watching this to understand, you mentioned earlier, self-care is not always bubble baths and rosé. Well, mental health therapy is very much self-care, and she's absolutely right. So you need to be prepared to do the work, because you are going to work. But we have to stay focused that the end result, long term, is that we'll be in a better position. And I also want to make sure we're clear here that therapy doesn't necessarily cure your illness or your problem. What it does, it gives you the tools from within yourself to cope. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to sit here and act like, therapy is going to be this miraculous answer. No, it's going to require work. And it's also about learning behavioral coping skills that will be beneficial. So not that we don't feel pain anymore or we don't deal with triggers, it's now we've learned how to cope with them. So if you've ever had questions about therapy or how it works, I really want you guys to pick up on that. There was something else that you talked about in your article that I would like for you to touch on. You have a Christian background, and for many of us who are raised Christian, we know that Bible values are heavily implemented in our life. And we are encouraged to give things to God, which I totally agree with. But so much so sometimes in certain Christian communities, it's almost as if God is the only way that you could cope. You don't need therapy. You could just pray and pray. which can be very dangerous language, especially if you're a person who has more than just emotional issues. If you have chemical imbalance and you might need medication or whatever the case may be, can you talk about how you were able to resolve being a Christian, but also understanding I need to go get the professional help, and how you were able to bring it to your mom, who you said, and your article is an elder in the church?
Yeah. So from the South, so in the Bible Belt, and literally everything is pray about it and give it to God, which are great solutions. But it's not all you need. So when I was noticing a lot of my struggle, I allowed myself to believe that my mom was not a person that I can confide in and talk to, because she was an elder of the church. And so I allowed myself to believe that she wasn't going to see me as her daughter, and hear what I was saying and hear that I needed more than just prayer. I thought she was going to have her Christian blinders on. And a lot of that was, like I said, I tricked myself into believing that. And that's how depression and anxiety and mental illness is. It makes you believe things that are not true, or it makes you over exaggerate, for the lack of a better word, a situation. And so even though my mother has never given me a reason in this whole entire earth, in my whole entire life, that she would put anything above me and not see me as her child and not protect me and do what was in my best interest, somehow I felt like this was going to be the divide. And so it took me a while to even come around and talk to her about it. And then just being like on social media, there has been people that I grew up with who made public cries for help and who have indicated things like suicide. And to see the elders and youth ministers just comment, "I'm praying for you," or "it will get better," and no one actually ever being like, "Where are you? We're coming to your rescue." You know, seeing that so many times and looking back into like my childhood, where there were people in church who had clear mental issues, and it was just like, they're crazy. Don't get him started because he's crazy. She's going to flip out if you say this because she's crazy. And it's like, no, these people could have been like, you know, bipolar or multiple personality disorder or schizophrenic, you know, all these other things. And they were just labeled as crazy. And so I just really had to be like, I love God. I have absolutely no problem with religion at all, but I can't allow myself to drown and die in the name of religion. Meaning, if I see this is how the Christians who I would normally go to for help, when I see that this is their only way and their only approach, this isn't going to work for me, because I've been praying, you know, I've been asking people to pray for me. I know how to open the Bible. I know how to download a Bible, scripture app. I know how to read all of those things. But I need a little bit more than that. And so it was hard, but I just knew that I had to do it. And once I finally came around and talked to my mom, and she was just like, well, what do you need from me? How do I support you? You know, what are you experiencing? Have you tried this? Or where's a therapist at? Or how do we find you a therapist? Or, you know, she immediately came mama bear mode and to rescue. And it wasn't being met with all you need is Jesus, or, you know, well, just pray and God will take it away. Because a lot of times growing up, you did hear things like either depression or spirits, or it'll be, you don't got nothing to be depressed about. And it's like, well, yeah, I do. I'm depressed because you keep telling me I ain't got nothing to be depressed about, because you're not listening to why I'm depressed. You know?
And to be clear, sometimes depression does not have a reason. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. And I need people to really understand, trying to make depression logical is not a thing that you should do.
You can't. depression is literally like, oh, okay, that's cool. I see her and I'm gonna be attached to her and this is how we gonna roll. It's how it feels, you know, a lot of the times. But like I said, once I got finally to that breaking point, essentially what it was, and had a conversation with my mom and understood, well, you can pray, but the Bible also says faith without works is dead. And so while you're praying and you're waiting for God to do his part, well, he needs you to do your part too. And your part can be seeing a doctor, seeing a therapist, going to a support group, doing whatever it is that you need to do on your end, because essentially whatever you're asking God for, you guys are entering into a partnership, just like any other kind of relationship. You can't ask your husband to do all these things for you and you do literally nothing, because you're not going to get as much as you want back out of what it is you're asking of them. And so that's just how I saw it. And I don't feel any shame in it. There's still people I'm friends with on social media. And if I share something about mental illness and mental health, it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm just gonna pray about it. Okay, well, you do what you see fit. This is my journey and what I see fit for me. And I'm a better person for it, is how that boils down.
And as Ronny stated, you know, I'm definitely a Christian. I believe in God, I believe in Christ, and I do believe in praying, and I do believe that throwing your anxiety on him is a very real thing. But just as she said, you have to work in harmony with your prayer. It is very unsafe to tell a person who might be battling more than what you can see that they just need to pray and it'll fix their problems. That leads to suicide very often. It leads to drug abuse very often, or into other unhealthy habits, cutting, whatever the case may be. Please encourage people not only to pray, and because that's a good thing, but also to go along with that prayer, ask for peace of mind to be able to approach medical and professional help. Because at the end of the day, you never want to advise somebody where you don't even have the experience or the knowledge or the background to tell somebody what they need, especially when it comes to mental health. There's so many facets of mental health that
It is.
we can understand, even when we're dealing with it ourselves. So it's always, I would dare I say, every time, I love when people pray for me, but also tell me if I need to hear it. If you aren't already pursuing mental health help, go ahead and do that. What I would love to do is drop some resource links down below for people who may not know how to reach out to a medical professional, some support groups, anything to help get started. And of course, I'm going to leave the National Suicide Hotline if you're a person who's watching this and you're even contemplating that. So before we wrap up, Ronny, because you said a mouthful today, and I really appreciate you being so open about everything. And again, I really want to encourage you guys to read this article on indigobluemagazine.com. Where can we find Ronny and your thoughts? Tell us your website, tell us your social media handles just one more time so that people know how they can find Ronny.
So my website is thelifeofronny.com. And Ronny is spelled Ronny. And my social handles, Twitter and Instagram, are The Life of Ronny.
Okay. So you guys, again, you make sure that you are subscribed to and following the work that Ronny's putting out, because she's writing and sharing so many thoughts. And she also can be found freelance writing for other magazines. So if you're following her on social media, you can keep up with when she posts for other magazines and platforms on social media, because she's out here educating and really helping young women, I think, and older women, honestly, because I'm sure I'm older than Ronny. But she even makes me feel like I gotta hold myself accountable, and she just has that kind of energy. So she's definitely worth subscribing and following. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope anybody watching this, you got what you needed from this. And before we go, do you have anything big coming up that we should be on the lookout for, or anything you're writing that we should be on the lookout for?
Um, I would just say follow me on Twitter. That's where I post like most of my life. I have a couple more articles scheduled to come out over the next couple of days regarding mental health for different publications. One actually lists resources that you can, well, they all list resources about finding therapy, ways to pay for therapy, dating with mental illnesses, which is a feature on your blog that's coming out over the next couple of days. So I would just say if you link to Twitter, that's the easiest way to keep up with me and everything that I have going on.
And you guys, she is correct. On August 2nd, Sunday, she will be releasing an article on my site, apmblog.com, entitled Mental Illness and Dating. And while I was reading through her article, she hit so many points that I think is going to resonate with many of you guys who are still in the dating pool. I felt like it was important to have the voice of someone who's currently single and dating. It's been a long time since I've dated, and I just think it was important to have a voice who is currently in that space. So I hope you guys are subscribed to the blog and you catch that on Sunday. It'll go live at 12 a.m. And again, that is going to be the conversation of mental illness and dating. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we will catch you next time.
Bye. Thank you.